Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is the Otherppl podcast, a weekly program featuring in-depth interviews with today's leading writers and other bookish human beings. My name's Brad Listi, and I'm your host. I'm in Los Angeles. How's it going out there? Hope you're doing okay wherever you happen to be. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you listen. Hit the subscribe button. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on social media, TikTok and Instagram. Or no, not TikTok. Well, I guess you could follow me on TikTok. I think I might be done with TikTok. I'm tired. Instagram and Blue Sky, maybe TikTok. So I'm doing a Craftwork episode today. If you are new to the program, Craftwork episodes feature a conversation about some aspect of the craft of writing fiction or nonfiction, or they feature a conversation about some aspect of the business of publishing. In today's case, it's going to be the latter. My guest is John Kaag, co-founder and chief creative officer of a new company called Rebind. John is also a philosopher. He teaches philosophy and is the author of several books. He's kind of an accidental entrepreneur, and he is partnering when it comes to Rebind with Clancy Martin, who some of you may be familiar with. I spoke with Clancy on this show not too long ago, a fine writer and a philosopher in his own right. So Rebind is, we're going to get into it in the conversation that I have with John, and he's going to be able to explain it much better than I could. But essentially, Rebind uses AI to create a new kind of reading experience. The company sort of describes itself as, quote, a mindfulness app for deep reading guided by the world's most interesting people. So they have partnered with a range of expert authors, scholars, and so on. People like Margaret Atwood, Deepak Chopra, John Banville, Roxane Gay, and many others. And you can read a classic text on the Rebind web-based e-reader. And as you go along, there is commentary from these experts. You can interact with it. There are kind of like radical ways that you can ask questions of these experts and then have AI generate a response that is drawn from actual interviews with the experts. And so again, it's a little bit complicated. John Kaag is much better at explaining how it works than I am. You're going to hear the two of us having a conversation in just a couple of minutes, but it's a fascinating and timely conversation. I know that some of you out there might be dropping into a defensive crouch right now. You might be getting angry. You might have punched a hole in the drywall. You don't like AI. You fear AI. I'm kind of, I got to be honest. I have a little bit of that. What is this AI? Why do people keep trying to sell me on AI? I don't want AI. I didn't ask for AI. But it does seem to be a technology that is coming, right? And can it be put to good use? Can it make reading books a richer experience? That's the question that I'm asking in this episode. And I had a great conversation with John Kaag. I hope you'll stick around and listen to it. It's coming up in just a couple of minutes. Don't forget that I do a weekly email newsletter over at Substack. I might move it from Substack soon. I keep hearing that Substack is bad. Now Substack is like irrevocably corrupted, and the people who run Substack are awful human beings. I can't keep up. I feel like social media is like this game of what is it? Like leapfrog, or you're jumping from lily pad to lily pad, and the lily pads keep becoming toxic, and you keep having to jump again. But anyway, my newsletter for now is at Substack. Check it out if you want to hear from me once a week in your inbox. Today's episode is brought to you by Live Right Press, publisher of the new novel Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fato. Winifred Nati is a governess to two young children named Drusilla and Andrew Pounds. But over time, Winifred comes to realize the perversions and pathetic preoccupations of the Pounds family. Mr. Pounds can't keep his eyes off Winifred's chest, and Mrs. Pounds takes a sickly pleasure in punishing Winifred for her husband's wandering gaze. Compounded with her disdain for the entitled Pounds children, Winifred Nati finds herself struggling at every turn to stifle the violent compulsions of her past. Christmas is coming, and she has very special gifts planned for the dear souls of Enzer House, brimming with sardonic wit and culminating in a shocking conclusion. Victorian Psycho plunges readers into the chilling mind of an iconic new literary psychopath. Again, the novel is called Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fato, available from Live Right Press. I should add that Victorian Psycho is being made into a movie starring Margaret Qualley. I read that somewhere. It is also the official February pick of my book club, the Otherppl Book Club. If you want to sign up for my book club, just go to otherppl.com. It's a good thing. You get a new book delivered to your door every 30 days. I interview book club authors on this show, so it makes for an enriching and holistic literary experience. Okay, so my guest once again is John Kaag, co-founder, chief creative officer at Rebind, and a philosopher and an author, all of the above. I had an excellent conversation with John about books and reading and AI and the future. So here we go. This is my talk with John Kaag.
So 2 years ago, John Dubuque, who's my co-founder at Rebind, reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to do a one-on-one tutorial around William James's Varieties of Religious Experience. John was 40 at the time. He had recently sold his family business in Middle America and had returned to his philosophy roots. And I'm a philosopher. I teach at UMass Lowell, and I write popular trade books for FSG around philosophy and memoir. John had read one of these books and wanted me to do a sort of one-on-one tutorial around varieties for 6 weeks. And almost immediately, ChatGPT hit the news, and John said to me, "Wouldn't it be cool if we could set up a bot, basically, that would help you read great literature?" And it wouldn't be just some sort of generic Khan Academy or OpenAI model. It would source your original commentary as you were giving me this sort of Oxford tutorial. And would you be interested in putting this machine together, this reading platform together that would help individuals through the classics, basically, and be a sort of new way to talk about books? It would be like having a book club with an expert that you might not have access to. So I recorded 30 hours of commentary about varieties and then also about Walden. We did it with Walden first. The sort of commentary that I would give to students if I were giving them a lecture or a one-on-one tutorial. And then we pulled together a technical team, first out of California and then out of Boston, to use LLMs to redistribute this commentary in conversation with end users.
What's an LLM?
A large language model,
Okay.
which is basically a form of artificial intelligence, which allows you to search large amounts of data, specifically language, like the 300,000 words that I gave on Walden. And when you ask a question in this platform, it searches my commentary, surfaces that commentary, and allows you to talk with it, to ask questions of the commentary, to ask deeper, to find sort of deeper insights that I would hope to give students as they work their way through the book. And then from there, once that worked, that was 2 years ago, I reached out to my best friend, Clancy Martin, who I've known for 15 years, I guess. And I said, "Hey, this worked pretty well for Walden. Do you want to do it for Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm down." And then when we did that book, we then moved on to contracting 26 commentators, from John Banville, who won the Booker Prize, to Lena Dunham, to Margaret Atwood, to give commentary on their favorite classic book. And what you get to do in Rebind is actually enter this book and talk to the commentator about the book.
Okay, so I have questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Like, it's a platform. So how do you engage Rebind? Is it web-based, or is it an app, or what is it?
It's going to be an app. Currently, it's a desktop application, desktop, tablet, and mobile application. we're developing an iOS app. So you go in, it's basically like an online bookstore, and you select. We currently have an offering of 12. We'll have 26 by the summer. And you go in and you say, I want to read Walden with John Kaag. And you purchase the book either individually or through a subscription. And then you're delivered to an ebook with AI functionality. What that means is basically like it's as if you're reading it on your Kindle or on your desktop, but there are chat windows where you get to interact at any time with the commentary that I provided. And you are prompted to sort of ask meaningful questions or to explore different themes. And when you do, the contributions that sort of come in as the other side of the conversation are basically like a simulated John Kaag teaching you Walden, so that you can actually see the original commentary that I provided, because we have what's called this X-ray feature, which means when you're talking into this platform or when you're typing into this platform and ask for a response, you're getting a response that is both partially my original commentary that's marked as such and generative AI spliced together, so that generative AI does the work of sort of stitching my original commentary together into conversation with you, so that you could imagine that not every piece of original commentary that I give or on the back end of this fits your particular interests, needs, concerns, or questions. What the generative AI does is sort of does the stitching that's required to get your question to match up with my commentary so that we can have a simulated conversation about this book. So and what you do is you basically, as you give more content as a reader, those comments, questions, and concerns all get saved in what's known as your highlight section. So you can go within this platform and go and see everything that you've said and what sort of conversation histories you've had throughout the course of the book. So it keeps a record of your reading engagement, your patterns of interaction, the questions that you had. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I'm curious to know if the AI ever screws up, because I know it's imperfect. Like, have you had instances where somebody will ask a question and the stitching will be off? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, of
what's
course.
the batting average?
That's a great question. So in Rebind, you have two options. You can talk to the rebinder or the commentator. That would be me or Clancy, John Banville, Margaret Atwood. And if you go off the track, in other words, if you ask Margaret Atwood if she likes scrambled eggs, the program comes back and simply says, we're supposed to be talking about Tale of Two Cities, not scrambled eggs. So it sort of guides you back to the text. And if you ask a question that it doesn't cover, you can actually see what pieces are generative AI and what pieces are Margaret Atwood. So you know that maybe you can get the generative AI to say some silly things, but we have it fairly constrained right around the book. So we are using the primary text from the book and the commentary as grounding for this conversation. And if you diverge too far, it'll say, sorry, I don't have an answer to that, or, you're really off track. So it's a little bit the batting average when it comes to hallucinations or non-hallucinations is much better than something like ChatGPT or OpenAI.
And that's a tech issue. You've got programmers, or see, this is the part of it that's totally a mystery to me, but people who are experts in LLMs and AI are building the parameters in like code or something so that this thing functions the way that it does.
Precisely, precisely. So it is programmed to give you follow-up questions. Your average chatbot is supposed to provide answers. I mean, if you talk to a chatbot on your banking, on your banking site or your real estate site or something, you just are asking questions and getting answers. But good teaching or good sort of deep thinking about difficult books happens when you're given questions and provide answers. So this isn't simply a tool to sort of get the fastest answer or the SparkNotes version of a book. what the platform is trying to do is to prompt you to think more deeply about particular sections of the book, with help. I give my own content or my own commentary as I work my way through Walden. So you get to know my own particular interpretation of Walden. I believe that he's a modern day cynic, or I believe Thoreau is a modern day cynic. You hear that through my commentary. And so what you're getting is not like a sort of encyclopedia, Wikipedia, or SparkNotes version of the book. You're getting a very particular take on the book.
So if I'm using Rebind, do I see Margaret Atwood when I'm what does she offer commentary on?
Tale of Two Cities.
Okay, so if I'm reading Tale of Two Cities and I'm engaging, there's like a little chat window over to the side and I'm seeing Margaret Atwood's commentary. That is in print, and is there any is there a video component to this?
There's an audio component to it, but there's not an avatar. We're not creating video avatars of the authors that speak to you. What we do have, however, is sort of masterclass quality films that are also embedded into the books. And what we do is we've contracted commentators like Atwood or Banville to provide about an hour worth of video commentary on the book that then is spliced up into shorts and interspersed through the book. They kind of give you teasers about what's going to come next. And then you take those video teasers and you see Banville in Dublin talking about James Joyce's Dubliners. And then you say, oh, that's where it happened. They're sitting in Mulligan's pub. Like, oh, that's what it was like. And then you're kind of transported into the book. And then you get to interact with the commentary at the end of each short story in Joyce's Dubliners.
Wow. Okay. And you're recording video and you're recording audio, obviously, and you're contracting a lot of big name people. Like you must, I mean, like, how do you like get them to do this? You must be giving them a nice check, it would seem, right?
Yes. So John Dubuque is the sole investor of Rebind. And what we did is basically had to explain how the platform worked to these, intellectual luminaries or great writers. And we had to show them that as opposed to the lawsuits against OpenAI, where authors are suing OpenAI for ingesting their books and just stealing their books, we were contracting them just to provide original commentary that then was meant to be redistributed by AI. So that was the first barrier of entry. Like lots of authors simply said, like, nope, no, thank you. They're like, this ruins the mystery of reading. Andre Dubus, who's a good friend of mine, said that to me. He goes, you're just, you're dealing with the devil here, John. Like you're about to ruin reading for everyone. And I actually don't think that's the case. I mean, these books are hard. And don't worry, I'm coming around to your question about how much do we pay these people. But what I will say is that these books are difficult and they need a little bit of assistance. You need a help to get through them. I mean, we have Philip Kitcher, who's taught the seminar for Ulysses at Columbia for the last 20 years doing Ulysses. I've never made it through Ulysses, and I've been in academia for 15 years. And I'm looking forward to getting through it with Philip and through Philip's commentary. So we had to show that this was a new way of thinking about the relationship between literature and AI. That's the first thing we had to do. And then we basically had to say the contracts, you can imagine, range from between a very well-funded speaking engagement right up to the lower end of a contract for a book. Because what these individuals are providing is actually a second book on a classic. So Lena Dunham is in the process of delivering her commentary for A Room with a View. She has already provided 25,000 words of commentary, and she's, aiming to get something like 50,000 or 75,000 words of commentary. That's book length. The difference
Well, I have a
is
question.
go ahead. Sure.
The commentary that she's delivering is generated through her sitting down and writing or through generative conversations that you are recording?
Great question. So we get the content in a bunch of different ways. Philip Kitcher, who's doing Ulysses, decided he wanted to write it all out. He's delivering something like 150,000 words on Ulysses. So the other way of getting commentary, however, is through audio, where they are given a series of questions. Commentators are given a series of questions, and then they audio record themselves responding to the questions as they work their way serially through a book. So that's another way of getting the content. And then that audio is then transcribed and edited for redistribution. Another option is we do interviews. So Banville, for example, who did James Joyce's Dubliners, sat down with me for 12 hours and I asked him every single question that I could think of, and they're personal questions too, about himself, about his writing, about his book, and about his books, and about the relationship to Joyce. So and Clancy and I have done something like 12 of these interviews so far, and the interviews last between 10 hours and 15 hours.
Not in
Um,
one sitting.
Not in one sitting. They're split up into sittings of 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah, that makes sense. What's it like? I mean, I don't know how much interviewing you've done in your past, but as somebody who does this all the time, I'm curious to know what the process was like and how it felt. Was it harder than you thought, easier?
It's amazing. I mean, in some cases, friendships are formed. I mean, Banville and I became very close through this process, and that was a delight. I, in some other cases, as I'm sure you can imagine, you have situations where it's kind of like you're trying to extract information instead of it being supplied more readily. And that's just the nature of dealing with artists and intellectuals, I think. So you have to be ready to ask really good questions, to establish some sort of rapport with the commentators so that they can provide the best commentary on the books that they've chosen. One of the really nice experiences that I recently had was Marlon James, who wrote A Brief History of Seven Killings that won the Booker Prize. He did Huck Finn for us. And he really he brought my understanding of the book sort of up to date. I hadn't thought about it since I was in seventh or eighth grade. And he made it this mature, timely, politically sensitive, politically urgent, intellectual project to read this book that I hadn't read since I was 14 or 15. And it was just great to sit down with him for that long to sort of get that content. And then what we're hoping and what we've sort of seen with the users that we now have, we opened the doors in October, is that people are enjoying getting the commentary that I enjoyed getting originally. So I was engaged in this one-on-one dialogue, and then they're sort of following in the footsteps of that initial interview that got the content in the first place.
So, what are some of the other authors that you're working with? You mentioned Lena Dunham, Marlon James, John Banville, Margaret Atwood.
Hmm. Chloe Cooper Jones, who wrote Easy Beauty and was a Pulitzer finalist, she did Heart of Darkness for us. Peter Catapano, who's the editor of the New York Times Stone column, he did Great Gatsby for us. Elaine Pagels, who's the MacArthur Fellow, who also is sort of the best New Testament scholar, is doing the Hidden Gospels. So she did commentary on the Gospels, but also the Gnostic Gospels. So Marlon James on Huck Finn, Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, joined me to do the Varieties of Religious Experience. That was John's initial ask. So those are
Wow.
some.
Wow. Okay. So, is there a particular kind of book that you think is most amenable to this like workflow that you've created, this process that you've created? Or is this something that you see uh, like as having like broad applicability to like all books?
You're asking the right question from both the business side of things and the future of publishing. You're asking exactly the right question. we have a suspicion that it is not going to be strange to talk to your books in the future in this particular way, and that embedded in every book, potentially, certainly every complex piece of fiction, and that both is contemporary intellectual property, but also the classics that are in public domain, that there's a very large swath of books that people want to talk about and want to have, conversation partners about those books. The books have to be complex enough that they deserve interpretation. So I can imagine that some books wouldn't reach that level of sophistication. But I think that a large number of bestsellers, a large number of contemporary classics do reach that level. So you're talking about scaling this not just from 15 to 25 books, but thinking about working both with public domain books that we have access to in the hundreds, potentially thousands, but then also working with publishers, Penguin Random House, OUP, Oxford University Press, Hachette, to actually work with them to make their books available through this new platform and in this sort of new medium of talking about books. That's the hope. I mean, that's where we're going, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking about it just, as a curiosity, and this is all new to me. So I have spent a fraction of the amount of time that you spent thinking about it, but it immediately occurred to me that whatever workflow you're creating and whatever commentaries you accrue, there's going to be the potential for it to become, like, I guess, its own platform, but also something that could just be integrated into ebook offerings from like the big publishers. And I'm also thinking of just the way that I read books, because you were talking about how in the future people are going to talk to their books. I think people talk to their books now. Maybe not as much as they will, but I think that happens sometimes. And as a reader, what I'm always doing is psychoanalyzing the author. Like, there should be some version of Rebind, which is just called like The Dirt. So somebody's writing some novel and it's like, well, what was actually happening in the author's life when they were writing this thing? Or what was the inspiration for it? Maybe I'm just a nosy person who's into people's business, but that's the kind of stuff I'm always asking myself, trying to figure out what was going on. Like, what's the backstory?
You're
Eh,
not, I mean, you are not alone in this. And, philosophers poo-poo this approach to reading. They call it the biographical fallacy, where we're not supposed to think about the biography of authors when we think about their works. But I think that this is how people read all the time. And I think it's actually a really fruitful way to read. That's why when you're reading Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Friedrich Nietzsche's most popular work, with Clancy Martin, Clancy's going to tell you a ton about Nietzsche's life and about the sufferings that he went through and how that relates to Zarathustra. And he's going to tell you a lot about himself, about Clancy's own sort of journey through existentialist literature. And I think that human approach, like, what makes people write the things that they do, that, since there's no sort of open and shut case about that, that's why people keep coming back to that type of question. It's because it's open ended, it's interesting, it's intensely personal, and I think that's what we're after. When we read, it's not, yes, reading opens us to other worlds, but reading also opens us to other people, and I think that that's really what we're after.
and hence the name of my podcast, which, I mean, the entire project of which is to try to figure out what was going on with people when they were writing their books, or at least in part. And I think that you could see potential workflows arise in relationship to what you're doing when it comes to book contracts and like the obligations that authors have, like upon acquisition. And what I mean by that, and I'm sure you've probably thought of this, is that writers might end up as a kind of de rigueur process offering commentary on their own books that will be integrated, right?
Precisely. Yeah, precisely. And it might be, I mean, one of the thoughts is that Rebind would just publish its own standard books with that part of the contract already baked in. So currently,
it could get really funny. Like, like this chapter, like, listen, I was going through a divorce, like shit was bad. I was drinking too much.
well, that's what I mean. I wrote a book called Hiking with Nietzsche, which was about, reading Friedrich Nietzsche when I was 19, what it did to me, how close it got me to suicide, and and then returning to Nietzsche when I was 37, when I had a family. And that mixture of the personal and the intellectual and the literary all together, I think is incredibly compelling to both readers and to writers.
It certainly is to me. I feel like it's like what you're talking about in terms of the reading experience is like a new kind of dimensionality. It's sort of there, but it's like at present, it's like this shadow dimension that I guess some of us engage with more than others or are curious about more than others. But this use of like artificial intelligence and large language models. I'm going to, by the way, start using all the new terminology that I'm learning just so that I can sound confident. But I
You
feel
should.
like, yeah,
You
this
should.
stuff, I feel like this stuff is maybe going to flesh out that shadow dimension and create maybe like it's like a new way to interact with books, a new way to read.
That's right. And I mean, I think that we have to, when I mentioned earlier that the typical chatbot, which runs off of a standard large language model, that is, it's usually used to get fast answers. And I don't think that that's the most interesting or the most honorable way of thinking about artificial intelligence. I think what's really interesting is we often talk about AI prompting. That basically means the prompting that we give to an AI in order to perform a particular task. That's what it's usually used to sort of refer to. I think the really interesting AI prompting is the prompting that the AI can get us to think differently. And I think that's a real difference. And that's what we're after in Rebind, which is basically can can an LLM or can a large language model make connections for you that you then can pursue in creative and interesting ways, in ways that enrich your life, enrich the reading experience. Not the question that, who is Tom Sawyer? No, like if I ask that to the chatbot in a Rebind, it'll give the answer. But that's not the interesting, that's not what the reading experience or a deep or meaningful reading experience is. It's not about just getting propositional content. It's about changing your life and like changing the way that you're thinking about your culture, yourself, your relations. And if we can use these new tools and AI to actually push you deeper into give you a teaser about what you might want to ask, and then you ask the question in your own way and then get a meaningful response back, and then a follow-up question. That's a different type of use case that I think is really interesting. One last thing that I will say is that AI has a tremendous ability to bring together, to take large amounts of data and then to make combinations between that data, between different ideas, and then surface those similarities and comparisons. If you ever think about like all the comments on a particular article that you might read in the New York Times or in um, yeah, any type of blog, and you have to scroll down through maybe 100 comments, right? In order to find two or three that sort of pique your interest. A large language model, simply by you asking a question, can surface the can surface the two ideas that it took you 10 minutes to go through. And if we're thinking about like communities of readers trying to share their commentary and share their thoughts and ideas, I can't think of a much better tool than these large language models to simply bring people together around books in a new way. I think that's something that we're exploring, that like we're really excited about, which is how do we get users to share comments, and then how are these comments shared in conversation with other users?
So does this AI technology learn as it goes? So as more and more readers are using Rebind and are offering their commentary and asking questions and interacting with these books, is the AI learning from that and then applying it to future readers?
So that's a great question. So we don't have necessarily a learning model up and running. Like, in other words, we're not training a master bot, a master Rebind bot. But what we are able to do is source original comments and commentaries from a well of data, from like the 300,000 words that I gave on Walden. And if you ask the question, John, I'd like to have a comment about, or like to have a conversation about, let's say, Diogenes, the ancient cynic, and Thoreau, it's going to search my commentary, pick out the pieces that work, and then let you have a conversation with those pieces. So it's not training a bot. It's rather allowing you to search a very large data set and pull in the right information. And it comes in verbatim from me. In other words, you can see, oh, Keg actually did say that Diogenes was just a dog who barked at all the passersby, just like Thoreau. That was verbatim Keg's language. And that ability to search and bring into conversation, I think, is one of the interesting things that we're trying to do at Rebind.
I feel like they should have this technology for podcasts. You can like Repod. I've thought about that actually. Like all the different episodes I've done, I can forget. I'm sure people listening will forget, but they'll be like, "Oh, there was that one time they were talking about X, Y, or Z, and with AI, you could potentially search in huge troves of audio content and get an immediate location to find what you're looking for."
Precisely.
That's got to be
And
coming, right? If it's not
it's
already
coming.
here.
It's here. It's here, I think. I mean, the fact that you can create a podcast from a PDF using LLMs, or from text, you can create a type of podcast. That's already here. I mean, and similarly, you could go from the text from a podcast and create new mashups or create new materials from those.
Wait, am I going to be obsolete soon?
No, 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 no. Of course not. What I think is cool about this is that what's cool is that it surfaces original commentary, like a record of an event, of people talking in a room. Like, it's and that's what's cool to me. It's not like this generic universal genie that will solve all of your problems. It's like it's letting you, a user, explore a vast amount of original content very quickly in conversation.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just thinking out loud here, but like one of the things, like I'm a paper book guy, like just as a matter of preference, but I'll listen to audiobooks. I'll read an ebook if I have to. I've even read books on PDF, for this show in a pinch. But like I think for just from a concentration standpoint, like if I'm removed from screens, I'm better off because I don't have that self-discipline, I think, to like be on a computer reading and to not start dicking around on God knows what. But one of the shortcomings of the paper book, and there really aren't that many. I think an old school book is a beautiful piece of technology that has stood the test of time for a reason. But something that I have lamented about my own reading life is that my highlights, my underlines in paper books live only within the covers of the book and within that particular copy of the book. And something in that Kindle offered and has offered for years is a kind of repository of all of the things that you highlight within Kindle, which I think in the aggregate, especially over many years or over even an entire lifetime, that becomes very interesting to me. Like if you could see, like if I had somehow had my grandfather's entire reading history and everything that he ever underlined That would be interesting to me. And
Yeah,
what I think you're going to be able to create with Rebind and what AI is going to be able to afford is not only that possibility of taking a person's reading life and the things that they've kind of highlighted and asked about and interacted with AI and with these commentators about, but it'll just be a repository for like all of the, it'll be like a public repository, right?
exactly. And I mean, I'm obsessed with that character back there, William James. He was the founder of empirical psychology at Harvard at the beginning of the 20th century, founder of American pragmatism. Um, and I like going through James's library, the books that he had, and seeing where he's underlined. You can do this at Houghton down at Harvard, or we have some at UMass Lowell. I like going through and seeing what he's underlined and the marginalia from others. And it's basically like the document of how he was reading and how it affected him in real time. And I don't know about you, but oftentimes I'll go back to my books in high school or college that I've just become like a samurai warrior when it comes to the highlighter. And I just highlight everything. And then I look at it years later and I'm like, why was I highlighting that? I really wish I would have like written down why I was highlighting that. And one of the cool features at Rebind is what you can do is when you highlight something, you can hit annotate. And then with the annotate, you can hit inspire me. And the inspire me button basically means off the highlight, basically means it's going to ask you a question about the passage that fits the passage. And it's going to sort of prompt you to leave a little document of what you thought about the passage. And if you don't like that one, you can say new prompt and it'll inspire you again about the same passage, or you can change the setting and make it more academic or more personal. And when you do that, it will change. So instead of something very technical or very exegetical that like bears down into the passage, kind of like a assistant professor would do at a school, you can have a very personal question. Like I was doing something with Darren Brown on the meditations. He did Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, this great Stoic philosopher's book. And when I went to the personal prompt and I highlighted something and I got a personal inspire me message, it basically said, "When have you failed to be stoic in your life?" And I was like, that was the question. And it was off this passage. When have you failed to do this? And it really forced me to think about my own life, think about the passage that I was reading, and then give a response. And when I hit submit, it gets saved. And that's saved for all time, basically, right? On the
That's
platform.
cool.
Yeah,
So you're a philosophy professor.
I certainly am.
You're a nerd in a good
Yeah.
way. I mean, I'm a nerd too, but I'm just saying that like, now you're an entrepreneur
Yeah.
and this is a big, heavy, I feel like it's a heavy lift in terms of sorting all of this out and creating the workflow and getting the technology figured out and then getting the talent or whatever you want to call it, the commentators to come in and do this commentary. This has got to be taking up a huge amount of time. It's taking over your life, right? I can see it in your eyes.
It's completely you see the the bags.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see them. Yeah, I it's completely taken over my life. Absolutely.
But
So,
in a good way. I mean, I'm sure it's very stimulating and exciting too, right?
yes, it has been stimulating and exciting. It's been the most enjoyable and exciting intellectual project that I have ever undertaken. And I've written a bunch of memoir books that I was really happy about at the time. So yeah, it's been the best and also the most difficult, I would say.
I mean, nothing
Transition.
great ever comes easy, right? If you're going to try to take a big swing, you're going to have to just be ready for the chaos. And starting a business is just inherently chaotic. You know, there's so many
Yeah,
question
it
marks.
it is, and it's also like at first we thought we were just putting together a new publishing business. In other words, like, oh, we're just putting out these new types of books, period. And now it's more like we're trying to form like this huge network of conversationalists about books and like putting them into conversation through this platform. And that's a different type of, it's almost like a sort of social network instead of a straight publishing move where you're selling individual books. You're selling really the opportunity to engage in a new way about literature. And it feels like it is a bigger undertaking.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Are you going to guinea pig your own books? I mean, you've written these kind of memoir-y works that are, I think involved with philosophy. Like, have you thought of kind of offering commentary on your own books and like testing out the model in that way?
Yeah, we have. We've thought about it, and I don't think that the permissions on authors who are excited about this technology and about this platform, I don't think the permissions are going to be too difficult. I've been so up to my eyeballs, though, in sort of getting commentary from these individuals, at least for the first 20 books, that I haven't had a chance to like think about my own, about my own contemporary IP or stuff that's not in public domain.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure this is probably an open question, but in terms of scaling and making this platform available to like a much wider range of books, like, is John Dubuque going to be like the sole investor, or are you guys going to have to go out and try to raise money to grow?
I think what we have to do is, for the time being, in the short to medium term, I think we have to build. We both have to build the catalog of books that we can put out. And at the same time, we have to build capabilities that encourage people to engage the books more and more, to realize that everyone going through a book like Tale of Two Cities has the possibility of giving their own commentary on every single paragraph or page if they want, right? They probably need to get prompted. They probably need to be sort of cajoled into giving commentary. But there are lots of people out there that like to talk about books. And if we can make the platform as accessible as possible, either through an audio form where you can sort of speak into it and it captures your own, which we do have already. I mean, you can speak into this chat window and it'll capture what you said, and then you can hit submit and then you'll get a response back. But the more we can make it easy, enjoyable, and intellectually stimulating for readers to come in and engage the platform, the more content there's going to be and the richer it's going to become. So I think that that's what we have to do for the foreseeable future. And we have to figure out, like, how do you go from standing up 15 books in a platform to standing up 2,000 books in a platform?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something we have to build and figure out.
I think, as I'm imagining this, I think that what's going to happen for it to really grow is that the audio, like voice recognition part of this is going to have to be really sophisticated, user friendly. Like I find like talking to Siri is still frustrating. Do you know what I'm saying? Like where I'm trying to communicate, I find it's still glitchy and it mishears me and it answers the wrong question. Maybe these things are perfected better in other places, but what I could imagine something like Rebind doing that would cause it to really take off would be that you could have a paper book in your hand, which is the way that I think the vast majority of people still read. I don't know what the numbers are between ebook reading and paper book reading, but I think paper books are still predominant, right? But I could
80/20.
see 80/20. Yeah. So that's pretty predominant. I could see a use case for Rebind where you have like an earbud in, sort of like in that movie Her, where Joaquin Phoenix is falling in love with his AI, but you have an earbud in, you have Rebind, online or connected through your phone, whatever it is. There's responsiveness within the app and it knows that you're using it. And as you're reading, you just ask it a question and then it talks to you.
Mm.
Like, right? I'm sure have you thought of this? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, we've thought of it. It's not as straightforwardly easy, but it is a great idea. And I
Yeah.
mean that's one of the um, there's a lot to do, and that's one of the things to think about, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's the thing, is that this is such like, it's like such the Wild West, and the possibilities are infinite, and I guess contingent upon the sophistication of the technology, which seems to be growing daily.
It is.
And
It
so
is.
I'm sure there are things that, like, you haven't even imagined yet, that like 5 years from now, you're going to be like, well, there's a hologram of Margaret Atwood who's going to appear in your room with you, and she's going to, talk to you, and it's going to seem like she's there. Like, I'm ready for just about anything at this point. But
Yeah, I know.
uh,
Me too. Me too. I mean, I just think that we oftentimes think about, okay, what does this problem really solve? And at first we thought, well, the problem that we're solving is complex books are so challenging that people need assistance. They need like a hand up. They need a tutor, basically. And then they need a companion to walk their way through. But as we work through this, it seems more like people really want to have meaningful conversations about meaningful things. Like that's a much deeper, bigger problem. And people want to have a social network that is not stupid and doesn't play to the lowest common denominator of our natures. Like, and books have always been this opportunity for people to talk and to interact. And people, the 5 million people who are in active book clubs in the United States are onto something. Like people like to read and read together. And if you can facilitate that in responsible and interesting ways, I think that that's really what we're trying to give. Like we want to get people excited about hard books and Ulysses, but we also want them to get excited about interpreting, thinking deeply about texts and about each other's ideas. And if that's possible, that's why the philosopher in me gets excited. I'm like, yeah, that I can get on board with that.
yeah, I mean, even if the use case for this kind of technology ends up being mostly like really difficult books or academic in nature, like that alone would be really valuable. Like people going through school and trying to engage with like really rich but difficult philosophical texts.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have had a tutor like built into the book to kind of help me like interact with it and ask questions about it. Like that alone would be hugely valuable.
One of the interesting things that happened, so the New York Times featured Clancy and me actually in Rebind over the summer in June. And after that, we built a wait list of 15,000 people very quickly because people were like, oh, I'm interested. I kind of want to, know what this is about. I think that it's challenging to explain to people what it is. It's not an audiobook exactly. It's not a Kindle and it's not um it's more like you're taking original commentary about something you want to learn, and then you're able to engage that commentary in completely unique and singular ways about the text or about what you want to learn. Um, but it's hard to explain because I don't think there's really been anything like it other than when you enter a classroom, a humanities class, and there are only 6 other people in your class, and you get to interact with your professor one on one, basically about the text. That's what it's like. Or, I mean, that's what we were aiming for. And then also to like get to care about each other's comments and get to see each other's comments because the social aspect of this is it's coming. So I mean, you're going to be like users of Rebind are going to be able to see each other and interact with each other's comments very soon. So the social aspect is coming too.
So many nerds are going to meet and
So
fall in
many
love.
nerds are going to be so happy.
um,
Don't we need more nerds though?
we
I
do.
think we do.
We do. I mean, and it's like a good place for them. Like if somebody's in the commentary section of, Walden or Thus Spoke Zarathustra or whatever it is, this is authentic nerddom. Nobody winds up there by accident, right?
It's true. Right now we have a self-selecting population, right? But can you imagine like if The Handmaid's Tale is on there, right? And you've just watched The Handmaid's Tale and you've been always wondering about should I read The Handmaid's Tale? But you haven't done it. But then you discover that like, oh, I don't know, Lena Dunham or Taylor Swift has provided commentary for Handmaid's Tale. You're like, I love that person. I admire them. They are the person that I, want to, listen to about lots of things. I want to listen to what they have to say about Handmaid's Tale. All of a sudden, it doesn't become so nerdy, right? It becomes more like, this is just an intellectual and sort of noble extension of the of sort of celebrity and social culture that we already have up and running. So, I mean, Lena's Room with View is going to come out in Lena Dunham's Room with View is going to come out in March, and I had the pleasure of going over and she let us film her for several hours about Room with View, and I'm thinking this is about Room with a View, but it's also about her and about her art and about what she cares about and about her, like how she connects with the book and what like why she thinks reading is cool. And I just think about my daughter who's 12, and what if Becca didn't like to read? And like, what if she needed some goading into reading? I could tell her all day to read Room with a View, or I could just give her the Rebind and like watch somebody who she already knows and admires work through this book. Like now it's not so nerdy, I think. That's my that's my 2 cents, I guess, about that.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see that definitely having currency. And it's like whatever gets people in the door, right? And I think that there's something to be said for the collective aspect of, and like the social aspect of these interactions. Like when it really comes to full flower, I'm trying to imagine what I'm going to be seeing. Like, will I be seeing the names of the people who are offering commentary? So if I'm reading a book and the principal commentator is not Taylor Swift, but let's just say she offers some comment, like just as a user, you'll know.
Not going to say anything, Brad,
Okay, okay. I'm just
but
wondering.
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly how far we're going to be able to make this go, but I would really love to have a book club and be able to have my book club use this platform and be able to see each other's conversations and allow our conversations to be integrated into the continual discourse. That would be really cool to me. Similarly, it would be really cool to think about, um, I mean, think about, I oftentimes, I'm debating whether to share with you something. I'm going to just do it. Who cares? Um, so we contracted Salman Rushdie to do Candide. I've loved, I've loved his writing for a very long time. He's been sort of like this person who I'm like very sort of intellectually I look up to. And the idea of being able to go into a book that I don't really know very much about, like Candide, go into it and say, oh, this is what this person who I admire, like, this is what he is seeing in this book. I think that's a really special moment. It's like they're sharing something of themselves that I care about by virtue of me caring about them. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And are there particular challenges that you have faced? I know you've probably faced a million as somebody who's trying to create this thing from the ground up, but is there like, can you point to like maybe one particular aspect of this that has really been tough?
Um, I would say getting over the allergic reaction to AI for the writing community has been a pretty difficult path. And it's been pretty scary for me to basically say, like, I believe in this. Trust me, this is going to be intellectually upstanding for you. Like, stick with this, and this is going to become a new way to read. And just saying, I mean, money only gets you so far. It has to actually do something cool, right? To convince intellectuals and writers that this is a way forward. And that's been both tough and intimidating. I think from a technical standpoint, we've been fairly militant about conversations that sound artificial, and getting the artificiality out of the conversations within the platform has been really tough. But it's been work that sort of has paid off, I think. You get that stench of like chat GPT. It uses deftly or delve or eloquent too much, or it has too many adverbs in it. And we've tried to scrub out all of that from the generative AI, while at the same time stitching in original commentary. And that was, I mean, that process was painstaking, to be like, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough.
But
So
it'll get better
it
as
will.
as it goes and as you do this work, right? You teach it.
That's the, yeah, that's what we hope.
John is crossing his fingers for people listening. So,
Yeah, exactly.
well, I'm trying to think of where to wrap up. I feel like if you look to the future 5 years from now, where do you hope this thing's going to be?
When Kindle came out, people thought nobody ever wants to read on a screen. And while ebooks still hold a relatively small market share against hard copy publishing, I would like to see this become a new way to read and a new way to create around books. It's not just about reading in a new way, it's about using all of those annotations that you used to write in the margins, and all of that audio commentary or all of that verbal commentary that you might have either in a classroom or in a book club or with a spouse or loved one or great friend, taking that content and then saving it and redistributing it in ways that are authentic and original and sort of honor your intent, in a platform where people can come and explore that content. So I think about this as a new way to read, but also a new way to create and to talk about books. That's where we would like to end up.
What about acquisition? Like I could see some big, huge corporation saying, "Hey, these guys have built this platform. We can integrate it." Like I could see Bertelsmann or whoever owns PRH. Like is that part of the calculus? Is that eventually you'll sell this company, or do you want to run it?
When do I want to run it? I'm a philosopher. I'm not a CEO. And I think that the potential for this is unlocked when there are enough books in the catalog that anybody can come in and be like, oh, I want to read this, I want to read this, I want to read this, and I want to set up a profile page, and I want to share my commentary about these books, right? And I think that unlock is probably through a sort of distribution partner or through a publisher. The question of acquiring, I don't want to go down that road. But I think that I will say that I don't think this works nearly as well if you don't have a certain range of a catalog, a large enough catalog. You can get pretty far with public domain books, and we intend to. But I think the real unlock comes when people see that this sort of AI functionality is not just an average chat bot. It's something quite different. So that's what I think we're aiming to do.
So where can people find you? Like if somebody's listening and they're like, okay, I want to check this out, what do they do?
They just type in Rebind, Rebind.ai, and it'll take you to the bookstore, and you can explore the site, and then you can go explore the books. You can see. Yeah, I would recommend actually sort of doing a demo and seeing what it looks like. Just click the video on the page, and it takes you to sort of familiarize you with the platform a little bit. And then you can take your pick of the books, and we're expanding the books every month. And so that's the next step, I guess.
And is it a subscription model? Did you say that?
The subscription model is $120 for the entire year of books. We currently have 12 books out, but we'll end up with something like 20 books by the end of the year. So, and it's between $29 and $60 per book if you just want to go with one book. The books take a little bit longer to read and to experience because you're watching videos, you're doing conversations, but I can say that the experience is much more meaningful than just sort of like going through in your, well, I don't know. It's a try it, I would say.
Okay, last question. As a resident philosopher and expert on Henry David Thoreau's Walden, and I think somebody who lives not too far from Walden Pond, right?
Right down the street. I swim there almost every day in the summer.
Okay. What would Henry David Thoreau think of Rebind?
Oh, man. Now, that's a great question. Um, so Thoreau was deeply, deeply suspicious of um, of meaningless interactions and social complexity. And in a certain way, any type of synthetic or synthetic, um, any type of artificial, anything fake would seem, anathema to Thoreau or would run against Thoreau's mindset. But I think that the fact that we're bringing people into books through a multimedia experience and through a deeply interactive experience would resonate with Thoreau. The fact that you can explore commentary simply by asking questions and then sort of choose your own adventure through that commentary is something that I think Thoreau would also sort of enjoy. And you might be skeptical, but I would remind you that Thoreau was the inventor of the round graphite pencil. I mean, he was an inventor, and he wanted to make communication easier. And he wasn't averse to using technology to do that. So I think that this is sort of the next iteration, an extension of that. I think that ideally, what Rebind does is brings people in contact with each other instead, and should be a provocation to bring people in contact with each other around something meaningful. And I think that genuine engagement is something Thoreau could have gotten behind.
So Henry David Thoreau would be an angel investor were he alive today.
I don't know if he'd be that far, but I think he wouldn't be. I don't think he'd be. I don't think that he would haunt my dream. He doesn't haunt my dreams because I'm involved in Rebind. And trust me, I've thought enough about Henry to know whether he's going to, or rather, know that he would haunt my dreams.
Yeah,
So
no, it's good. It's good to kind of have that framework to use, right? I mean, you just got to kind of measure yourself against him. I feel like that's a pretty good measuring stick. Like, would Henry Thoreau be mad at me?
exactly, simplify, Kaag. What
There you
about all this coding? But I think, I mean, Thoreau is also really worried that the classics were dying. If you read the section on reading in Walden, he says people no longer read meaningful things. They read the newspaper, they read the tabloid, they read the magazine in Thoreau's day. Today, I would offer probably we read different things, but things that Thoreau wouldn't really support. And going back to meaningful conversation about meaningful texts is what Thoreau wanted us to do. So,
Well, John Kaag, it's been fun talking with you and fascinating to hear your recent history as an entrepreneur slash philosopher, I guess philosopher slash entrepreneur. And I wish you luck with this venture and all that it entails.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, you guys, there we have it. That was my conversation with John Kaag, co-founder and chief creative officer at Rebind. If you want to learn more, go to rebind.ai. You can also follow Rebind on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, you name it. Again, the company is called Rebind, and that was John Kaag, co-founder and chief creative officer, philosopher, and author. He's a hyphenate. So check it out. Don't forget to subscribe to the Otherppl show wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on Blue Sky and Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter over at Substack. If you enjoyed today's episode, if you enjoy my show, generally speaking, and you want to help me keep making episodes, please support the work that I do over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Again, that's patreon.com/otherpplpod. If you want to join the Otherppl book club or get an Otherppl t-shirt or sweatshirt, just go to otherppl.com, the show's official website. If you have 2 minutes and you want to do me a quick favor, please give this program a rating wherever you listen. Rate it, review it at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so on. It helps the show in the algorithm, helps the show find new listeners. Finally, I have a book out. My latest book is a novel. It's called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything, available in trade paperback, ebook, and audiobook editions. I narrate the audiobook. So if that sounds good, go get my book and read it. Again, it's a novel. It's called Be Brief and Tell Them Everything. All right, so coming up on Thursday, I'll be back with my friend and co-host, Mira Gonzalez, for a brand new episode of Brad and Mira for the Culture, the weekly pop culture program that we have been putting out for about the last 8 months. It's meant to be a hangout show. It's the kind of show you can turn on and have on in the background. Mira and I talk about what's happening in popular culture. I have limited understanding and limited patience. Mira knows a lot more than I do, and I try to navigate the tension. So check it out. Coming up on Thursday, Brad and Mira for the Culture. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.